For 4 years, I thought I had the perfect relationship. No drama, no doubts. But then, everything changed. The distance, the secrets, the betrayal. I saw it all with my own eyes. And just when I thought it was over, the real nightmare began. Now I can't help but wonder, was I ever her boyfriend or just her backup plan? I never expected to meet someone like her at a marketing workshop of all places. It was one of those dull college events where most people were either half asleep or pretending to care. But there she was, bright, confident, and completely out of my league. We clicked instantly, bonding over our shared love for late-night gaming, anime marathons, and deep-dive conversations about life. Unlike my past relationships, which had been full of drama and exhausting fights, this one felt easy, natural, no jealousy, no unnecessary arguments, just two people genuinely enjoying each other's company. It was almost too good to be true. Over the next few months, we became inseparable. Weekends were spent binging shows in our tiny dorm rooms, arguing over which RPG was superior, and making spontaneous trips to food joints at 2 a.m. She wasn't just my girlfriend, she was my best friend. Everything about her felt familiar, yet exciting. There was something comforting about knowing that for once, I was in a relationship where I didn't have to constantly prove myself. It felt stable, safe. And maybe that was the first mistake, thinking that stability meant permanence. 4 years passed, and our connection remained steady. We celebrated each other's successes, supported each other through failures, and never once did I doubt where we stood. Her warmth was consistent, her affection unwavering. Even my family adored her. My mom would go on and on about how I'd found a keeper, while my dad joked that I should start ring shopping. I laughed it off, but deep down, I thought, maybe they were right. Maybe this was it. Maybe I had beaten the odds and found the one person who wouldn't let me down. But life has a funny way of proving you wrong. The first cracks in our perfect little world didn't appear suddenly. They crept in, quiet and unnoticed. Small changes, barely significant at first, like whispers in the background of an otherwise perfect symphony. Looking back, I wonder how I didn't see it sooner. How I let myself believe that good things don't change, that people don't change. Graduation came and went, and somehow, we managed to land decent jobs right out of college. Me as a back-end developer, her at a marketing agency. It felt like we had made it. No more late-night cramming, no more worrying about grades. Just two young professionals navigating adulthood at their own pace. We didn't move in together, but that never seemed like a problem. We had our own places, our own routines, yet we saw each other almost daily. It was the perfect balance, independence with just the right amount of togetherness. At first, it felt like we were living the dream. We had our own money, no financial stress, and weekends still meant gaming marathons and lazy mornings in bed. She had this fire in her, ambition, drive. I admired that about her. Work didn't drain her the way it did most people. She actually seemed excited about her job, always coming up with ideas, pushing for new strategies. Meanwhile, I was content. I liked my job, but I didn't feel the need to prove anything. I was comfortable, maybe too comfortable. My family remained convinced she was the one. They loved her energy, her charm, and honestly, I did too. But there was something I ignored back then, her relationship with her own family. It was distant. She rarely talked about them, barely visited. She brushed it off, saying they weren't close, but sometimes I wondered if that was the full story. If maybe, deep down, she was searching for something she never got from them, and if unknowingly, I had been filling that role. But again, I ignored the signs. Why question something that seemed so perfect? We were stable, steady, predictable. And yet looking back, I realize predictability can be dangerous. It makes you blind to the changes happening right in front of you. It started as a passing idea, just one of those random what-if conversations we had over dinner. She was venting about her job, about how she felt stuck, underappreciated. Then, casually, she said, I think I want to start my own agency. At first, I didn't take it seriously. Everyone fantasizes about quitting their job at some point. But she wasn't just dreaming. She was planning. Within weeks, she had spreadsheets, financial projections, a full-fledged business model. She was determined, and I admired that. She always had this way of making things happen. I won't lie, part of me was nervous. Leaving a stable job to start a business is a massive risk. But she was so confident, so sure this was the right move. "I just need to take the leap," she told me one night, eyes practically glowing with excitement. And I wanted to support her, so I nodded, encouraged her, told her she could do it. Because honestly, I believed she could. She was the kind of person who made things work no matter what. At least that's what I thought. When she finally quit, there was this exhilarating energy around her, like she had just escaped something, suffocating. She dove in headfirst, spending long hours perfecting every detail, building connections, reaching out to potential clients. I could see the passion in her, the drive. She wasn't just working on a business, she was chasing a dream. And if you had asked me then, I would have said with absolute certainty, she was going to succeed. But dreams don't always align with reality, and sometimes passion isn't enough. Looking back, I wonder if she ever considered the possibility of failure, if she ever thought about what would happen if things didn't go according to plan. Because slowly, almost imperceptibly, that initial excitement started to crack, revealing something I wasn't prepared for. At first, things seemed promising. She secured her first client, a small bakery that needed help with social media. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She threw herself into the work, convinced that this was just the beginning. But weeks passed, then months, and the momentum never picked up. She reached out to businesses, pitched ideas, networked endlessly. Yet for some reason, nothing stuck. The contract she expected never materialized. The business she had so carefully planned was starting to look like a sinking ship. Instead of scaling back, she doubled down. She hired friends, promising them future profits instead of actual salaries. She spent money on expensive software, branding materials, and unnecessary upgrades, all under the belief that success was just around the corner. I watched, concerned, but every time I tried to bring up the finances, she waved it off. "It's just a rough patch," she'd say. "Every business struggles in the beginning." And I wanted to believe her. I really did. Then came the debt. Late rent payments, overdue bills, credit cards maxed out. I started noticing unopened envelopes piling up on her desk, ignored calls from landlords and service providers. But she refused to acknowledge the problem. She kept chasing the dream, convinced that one big break would fix everything. And every time I suggested she consider a backup plan, her frustration grew. "You don't believe in me," she snapped one night. That hurt, because I did believe in her. I just wasn't sure belief was enough anymore. Deep down, I think she knew it was falling apart. But admitting failure, that wasn't in her nature. So instead, she kept pushing forward, refusing to adjust course. And as the debts grew, so did something else. Something I didn't fully understand at the time. A shift, a distance. Like she was pulling away, searching for something, or maybe someone. It started with a simple request, just a little help covering rent. "It's temporary," she assured me. "Just until I land another client." I didn't hesitate. Of course I'd help. She was struggling and I had the means to support her. $400 a month wasn't nothing, but it wasn't going to break me either. And besides, I believed in her. I told myself this was an investment in her future, in our future. What I didn't realize was that temporary would stretch into something much longer. At first, I didn't mind. I wanted to be the kind of partner who showed up when things got hard. But as the months passed, things didn't get better. If anything, they got worse. The business wasn't growing, yet she kept pouring money into it, money she didn't have. And while I was covering her rent, she was still spending on high-end coffee meetings, new gadgets, networking events. I started feeling less like a supportive boyfriend and more like a silent investor in a company that was clearly failing. I brought it up gently, asked if maybe she should reconsider her approach. The reaction wasn't what I expected. She got defensive, almost offended. "You think I should just give up?" she snapped. That wasn't what I meant, but I let it go. Maybe she just needed more time. Maybe I was being impatient. But doubt started creeping in. If she really believed in us in this life we were building together, wouldn't she be making smarter choices? Wouldn't she be putting us first, instead of chasing a dream that was crumbling beneath her? And then, something changed. Her gratitude started to fade, replaced by an almost entitled expectation. The warmth, the appreciation, gone. It was as if my support had turned into an obligation rather than a choice. And slowly, subtly, I started feeling less like her partner and more like an ATM. At first, I told myself it was just stress. She was under pressure, trying to keep her business afloat, dealing with financial struggles. It made sense that she was distracted, distant. But then the excuses started piling up. Plans we'd made were suddenly too much. Calls went unanswered. Texts became shorter, colder. And when she did respond, it wasn't the same. She was there, but not really. Like she was keeping one foot in the relationship and the other somewhere else. Her world began shifting in a direction that didn't include me. She started spending more time with her business circle, especially Jake and Mike, two guys I barely knew but started hearing about constantly. "They get it," she'd say when I asked why she was always with them. "They understand. The grind." At first, I brushed it off. Networking was important, right? But then, the gym sessions started. The late nights, the last-minute cancellations. And the worst part? She didn't even seem to notice how much she was pulling away. Her social media told a different story. It was full of photos. Her, Jake, Mike, their little entrepreneur squad. Smiling, laughing, celebrating tiny business wins that didn't actually seem to be making money. And me? I was nowhere to be seen. It was as if our relationship had been quietly erased, replaced by a curated image of ambition and hustle culture. When I confronted her, she laughed it off. "You're overthinking," she said. But the feeling in my gut? It told me otherwise. I should have pushed harder. I should have asked more questions, but I didn't. Instead, I waited. For what, I don't know. Maybe for her to come back, to realize what she was doing. Or maybe deep down I was waiting for the truth to slap me in the face, and trust me, it did. Something in me snapped that night. I don't know what I was expecting when I decided to surprise her, but it definitely wasn't Jake, shirtless, standing in her apartment like he belonged there. The place was a mess. Empty takeout boxes, clothes scattered around. And, her? She didn't even look shocked to see me, just annoyed, like I was intruding, like I was the one out of place. I tried to stay calm. I asked her to step outside to talk. But before she could say anything, Mike, yeah, he was there too, chuckled and muttered something under his breath. Something about competing for her attention. And that was it. That was the moment I realized I had lost. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because I had spent months fighting for someone who had stopped choosing me a long time ago. I don't even remember leaving. It was like my body went into autopilot. 1 second, I was in that apartment, drowning in the humiliation of it all. And the next, I was outside, inhaling the cold night air like it could erase everything I had just seen. But it didn't. It never does. And somewhere between the anger and the heartbreak, I made a decision. I was done. Done being the backup plan, the safety net, the fool. The next morning, I canceled the rent payments. No warning, no explanation, just a quiet final act of self-respect, and it didn't take long for the consequences to hit. Within weeks, the eviction notice was on her door. And suddenly, the woman who had treated me like an afterthought was desperately trying to get my attention again. But this time, I wasn't listening. The moment she realized I had cut her off, the panic set in. First, it was the texts. Long, desperate messages about how I was ruining her life, how I was destroying everything she had worked for. Then came the guilt tripping. She needed more time. She was so close to making the business work, and if I really loved her, I wouldn't abandon her now. But I wasn't buying it, not anymore. When the pleas didn't work, the anger took over. The messages turned vicious. Suddenly, I was selfish, petty, a bitter ex who wanted to see her fail. And it wasn't just her. Her friends, Jake, and Mike included, jumped in, posting online about how I had sabotaged a strong, independent woman's business. They twisted the story, made it seem like I had betrayed her, as if I hadn't been the one funding her lifestyle while she played entrepreneur with her new friends. Then came the worst part. She showed up at my apartment, banging on the door at 2 a.m., demanding that I face her, calling me a coward. I stood on the other side, heart pounding, refusing to open up. I didn't owe her anything, not anymore. When she wouldn't leave, I called a friend. He told me what I already knew. I needed to document everything. So I started saving the messages, recording the calls, making sure I had proof in case this escalated further. And deep down, I knew it would. Because this wasn't just about money or a failed business. This was about control. And for the first time, she wasn't the one in charge. At first, I thought she'd give up, that after a few weeks she'd move on, find someone else to lean on. But she didn't. Instead, she got worse. I started seeing her everywhere, outside my office, near my gym, even parked down the street from my apartment. She wasn't trying to talk. She was just there, watching, waiting. Like she wanted me to know she wasn't done with me yet. The messages never stopped either. Some were angry rants, some were guilt trips, and some were unsettlingly sweet. I miss you. We can fix this. As if none of it had happened. As if I could just erase the image of Jake in her apartment, of her laughing while I stood there like an idiot. And when I didn't respond, the threats started. Not physical ones. No, she was smarter than that. But the kind meant to get in my head. You'll regret this. You think you're safe? I knew I had to act. I went to the police, filed for a restraining order. At first, they didn't take it seriously. After all, she hadn't technically done anything illegal. But then she showed up at my apartment again. This time, she wasn't just banging on the door. She was trying to break in. That was enough to get her arrested. And when I saw her being taken away in handcuffs, I didn't feel relief. I felt exhausted. Like I had been holding my breath for months, and even now I wasn't sure if it was over. Jake and Mike tried to defend her at first, but even they eventually distanced themselves. They moved on, found real jobs, left her behind. And that was when I realized she had burned every bridge, not just with me, but with everyone who had tried to help her. And now she had nothing left. After everything, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay. The apartment, the routine, even the city itself felt tainted. So I moved. New place, new locks, new start. I wasn't running away. I was reclaiming my life. But no matter how far I tried to distance myself, the scars remained. Trust wasn't something I could give freely anymore. Every text notification, every unexpected knock at the door sent my heart racing. It was like I was waiting for her to reappear, to drag me back into the chaos. Therapy helped. At first, I resisted. I didn't want to sit in a room and rehash everything, but I needed it. I needed someone to tell me that I wasn't crazy for feeling this way, that it was okay to grieve, to be angry, to admit that I had been manipulated. And slowly, I started to feel like myself again. I reconnected with old friends, picked up hobbies I had abandoned. I even started gaming again, something I hadn't realized I had stopped enjoying until she was gone. Dating, that wasn't even on my radar. Not yet. The idea of trusting someone that deeply again felt impossible. Maybe one day, but for now, I was okay being alone. Because for the first time in a long time, alone didn't mean lonely. It meant peace. It meant freedom. It meant knowing that I wasn't responsible for fixing someone who never wanted to be saved in the first place. Looking back, I don't regret loving her. I regret not seeing the signs sooner, not listening to my gut when things started to change, But I've learned. I know now that love isn't about sacrifice at all costs. It's about balance. And if you're the only one holding the weight, then maybe, just maybe, it was never really love to begin with.
Keep watching our stories by clicking on one of the videos that appear on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be alerted about new videos. See you next time.